Hey everyone, welcome back to another Board Game Co. preview, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, is it Board Game Co.? Is it Devin Talks Tabletop? Is it Play the Game? Because Devin, you've changed where you're filming these 35 times now. I will get there, I promise. Soon we will be at the point where I am filming in a stable environment. I promise. I promise. Today, I have already done an unboxing for Disrupt. So this is from Triple Meeple Board Games. This is on Kickstarter right now, and this is going to be a paid preview. So I have unboxed it. I have also now played the game, and this is me going to be sharing with you a little bit more of an informative overlook of the game. I gave some information during the unboxing, but that was just me having read through the rules and not having played the game. So now that I have the experience of the mechanics, I wanted to share with you guys what is going on in this game. This is an asymmetrical game with up to 4 players. You can play at 2 and 3 player counts, though at that point, the angel investor or the angel investor and the business process outsourcer will be automated. Their decks will be drawn of the cards that they play to help out. And it's specifically those two and none of the other 2 players. If you're down to 2 players, one person is going to be the start-upper and the other one is going to be the market leader. I'll explain that in a moment. So as I said, this is a 2 to 4 player game. It'll take, 60 to 90 minutes, depending on necessarily the player count that you're on and also the experience of the players that are involved. And I said it's asymmetric because all 4 of these players or of these roles function differently. So you have the start-upper, who this is their particular credit card tracker for the amount of millions that they have. Now, the start-upper begins the game the least wealthy. Obviously, they have more shares of the particular projects that they're trying to put into the game and into the economy to compete with the existing market leaders' projects, but they don't have funding yet. So they're going to have the lowest amount of money to start the game with, and their goal is to get their projects successfully through the workflow of design, development, and marketing to where by the end of the game, they can compete with the existing projects, and depending on the size of the market share that each of them have, those individual projects, out of those 6, they will score points. And it's a matter of the design, the development, and the marketing cubes that will grow on both the existing projects and the competing new projects from the start-upper. So the start-upper is the first role. They have this kind of teal meeple that is here along with the blue credit card. Now, keep in mind, this is a prototype. So everything about the game is subject to shift in terms of the production, the pieces, the components, all of that could change over the course of time. I mean, I will say for a prototype, it does have some very nice custom wooden pieces. You've got the likes here, the innovation, and the experience, all 3 of which are the resources that you'll pool and use throughout the game, but I'll get to that in a moment. So, first player is going to be the start-upper. The second one is this business process outsourcer. So what this person is think of them as the kind of like software and hardware individuals that make a company's design function effectively. So it's not just the start-upper that the business process outsourcer or the BPO wants to be catering to. They also want to be catering to the existing projects that are out there to the market leader. So the BPO and then also the angel investor here, who is the third character and has the Celestial Bank, of course, they have the most amount of money except for the market leader. The market leader naturally has a lot of money. They have the dominant projects in the industry. But the angel investor is the one that is also interested in both maintaining profitability through the existing projects and investing in projects that might be the ones that usurp or subvert the economy or market expectations and beat out existing projects. So both the angel investor and the BPO have this kind of duality. They're this split focus of wanting to invest in what already exists for its profitability and wanting to invest in what's up and coming to make sure that if it's going to be more successful than what it might replace, then that they're in on the ground floor and that they have shares of those particular projects. So as I mentioned, those 2 roles, are the ones that you actually automate if you're at lower player counts. And the reason for that is everybody's got unique decks. So you have the market leader deck here with the crown, you have the angel investor with the, seraph wings, you have the BPO with the kind of like connectivity and maybe like, cloud-based visual there. And then you have the deck of the startupper, which is showing, a hand spurring on and nurturing the growth of something new. The reason why these two cards or decks are the automated ones is because the angel investor and the business processor function differently in that they are able to bring in additional worker placement locations. So if you're looking at the shape of the board right here, you've got 4 worker placement columns, and whenever a worker goes onto them, they start at the top and activate each of these rows until they're down at the bottom. Now, if there is no one in that column yet, they can obviously progress all the way to the bottom and get all the bonuses. If you go into a column that someone else is in, you can only progress as far as it will allow you. The other person blocks you and prevents you from activating the full potential of that worker placement column. But the angel investor and then the BPO, they both have cards in their deck which you can then place over here on the right side. That just so happened to perfectly be the bottom cards. And then other players can go to these spots and activate whatever this ability is, which increases the variability of what you can play on any given turn, and it also gives benefits to the player who has played those cards, and then potentially also give benefits to the player who placed the card after the active person goes to this spot. So this is called like a split resource or split in, kind of cost card. And you'll actually bundle resources across both sections. And then the active player will get to pick which one they want, the owner of the card will get to pick which one they want, and then the active player gets the remainder. So you're sometimes incentivizing the owner of the card to pick a particular section so that you can get the other one. But it is definitely something that you have to be mindful of in terms of how you want to separate those investments and those resources. So let's get to kind of the flow of the game in general. I've got these nice little reference cards for how the phases go. You are going to have the phase of the operations phase, which is where you have the worker placement. So the workers are going to go into these columns, and if the spots are available at the beginning or if they come available during the operations phase, you can also go to cards that are placed by the BPO and the angel investor. Once you finish the operations phase, you're going to be going to the project phase. The project phase is where the startuppers' projects will progress across design, development, and marketing, slowly pushing along until the end of the game. So one project at a time that is new is brought onto the board, which means you will slowly, by the end of the game, have all of the projects in there. And the game takes place over 6 rounds. So you will have enough time to get all of the projects across the end line and then potentially see how many design, development, marketing cubes are there and how many of them have accrued, of course, the entire game to be on the existing projects. But that's not the only thing in the project phase. You will also have cards that players play that will actually go into these workflow columns. And in these workflow columns and rows, you have the ability to, whoever is the owner of the card can choose whether they want to activate it. And it has a cost that is how many resources it takes to play the card. So this takes 2 innovation here to play the card. You have a bonus immediately that you get upon playing it. So anybody that plays this, or the startupper who plays this, would get $4 million. And then this would affect every project within the workflow. And so you would have to determine, is that what you want? Is this what you want to make sure that you put into the projects that are present? And so that is how the project phase happens. You're going to have the activation of all of the icons and the abilities of the cards in your workflow. Then you're going to move the projects in their pipelines further to the end state. And then if there are any that you haven't introduced yet, you're going to bring them in to where eventually you're going after all of these different projects and trying to place a lot of resources on these particular projects. So there are some other sections of the board that make sense to talk about. This is the brand equity track, and what this is tied to, it probably makes the most sense to explain what all of the worker placement icons do, because then that relates to the other sections. So this one right here is just simply gaining a like, and that, you know, is the awareness of people in the consumer base acknowledging and, you know, appreciating what you've got. This right here is the symbol for experience, which is this teal cog, or maybe aquamarine, maybe cog with the red iconography on it. And then the black piece right here with the yellow light bulb is innovation. Those are the three resources. You can get them at these locations. This just grants you a like. This one, you have to put down a share on the board. All players will have shares, and every single player can invest in every single different type of project. And so, you know, sometimes you're going to be divesting yourself of shares in order to gain funding, because you need money to be able to purchase shares, to be able to activate some of the effects that you want in the game. And so divesting yourself of shares or putting them up for sale is a way to entice both the public, which is this bottom row down here, and other players to invest in it. And you want to make it enticing, and sometimes you want to value it highly, because you're trying to encourage people to think that this is a project you're motivated by and that you really want to succeed based off of the market share size, and also whether it is in a bear or a bull market that is going to affect the market share at the end, and also the secret agenda of the projects. So the startupper is the only one that at the beginning of the game knows what these secret agendas are, and this is going to remove blue cube and add a green cube at the end of the game. And so that will affect the end game state of these projects, is these secret agendas here that are going to be leveled on to every single one of those spots. So knowing how well a project is set up to do, and then also capitalizing on other players' uncertainty or other players' investment in particular projects. If one player has a lot of shares of that project, then obviously they're going to be motivated to protect it, to make it stronger, and to align yourself with anybody else that is doing the same in here. And that's kind of where the shifting priorities of the four players come into play. The market leader and the angel investor and the BPO, they need to play wisely. And then the startupper obviously needs to motivate people to be interested in the projects that they're trying to bring into the economy. So you've got like, you've got experience, you've got innovation. Those are your three resources that you use. Money is obviously your final resource that is tracked on your credit card dial. And then you've got playing cards, drawing cards, playing cards once again, discarding cards to go up the brand equity track. Anytime you are, wherever you're at on the brand equity track, if you ever cash in the ability to get a bonus based off of where you are or any place below it, it makes sense to get higher up this brand equity track. It's better long term. So it's better long term, and you have to move up it by discarding cards. And also the final four tracks will actually give you end game scoring for money based off of the amount of resources you have. For every 4, for every 3, for every 2, and then, or for every 5, for every 4, for every 3, then for every 2. And so the higher up you are, the more you can do. And especially once you get to these higher levels, anytime you activate your ability of wherever you are on the brand equity track, you can even add cubes directly to projects, which is a pretty strong thing to be able to do. So the brand equity track is an important tug of war process of, or a race more accurately than tug of war, of trying to get up there before other players. This is the social hype, which affects definitely the event cards and what the public is interested in. The public, if they ever purchase shares, the final phase after the project phase is the event phase, and the shares that the public want will always be focused on the order of social hype. And it can also affect other cards that you might be playing. So sometimes it's not just about the existing success of the project, but also what the public thinks of that project and how excited they are by it. So this is progressing up the social hype track This is progressing down the social hype track. This is getting first player for next turn. This is peaking at the event card. And then also over here, this is discarding cards to draw up as many. And this is adjusting the market share of one of the project sections. And so that's nice because, especially if you know whether it's a bear or a bull market, and if you're trying to affect what other players are investing in. And then additionally, if you're also just trying to reap a higher reward from your own investments in shares, then you might want to adjust up or down the market share there. So you've got brand equity, social hype, the public share market, which each player has their own sections labeled from 8 to 4, and you're allowed to place those wherever you want. And then you have the public section, which is when they buy from players through event cards, then they get slotted into here, and players are able to purchase those from them. And so this is kind of how you develop the shifting market of who owns shares of which product or project. And the entire game takes place with 6 rounds of an operation phase, a project phase, and an event phase. And so you're moving through the pipeline, you're activating the workflow, you're adjusting the design, development, and marketing cubes of existing projects and upcoming projects. You're trying to affect the state of the market share and being aware of the bear and the bull market and how that might affect the projects at the end of the game, as well as managing your resources so that you can play from the asymmetric deck that you have. Every single person has cards that they can slot into the workflow. The angel investor and the BPO have cards that can add in extra worker placement locations. They all have an ability to gain you more money as you play them, but they also have the resource cost that you need to do. So it's a matter of building up your resources to play your cards, to affect the state of projects, and to adjust your investment in individual projects based off of your perceived idea of how successful they currently are or how successful they're going to be by the end of the game. And so at the end of the 6 games, at the end of the 6 rounds, I can't speak today apparently, but at the end of the 6 rounds, you will assess how each of the projects have done, and then you are going to go ahead and assign market share cubes to it to determine who has done it better. And maybe by the end of the game, Eternium will be of higher value than Dicecoin, which will mean it will give you a higher profit per share that you own. And other ones might actually, maybe they'll have not even a full 3 cubes where they have one of each of design, development, and marketing, and that will actually prevent or negatively affect the scoring that players could get based off of those shares. So that is Disrupt. This is how the game functions. You are in an asymmetric economic worker placement game where you're trying to make sure you adhere to your role. Whether you're the startupper, you really want to lean into that. Whether you're the BPO or the angel investor, you want to make sure that you are either very useful to both players if you're the BPO, or very well connected to the projects that are the best to succeed if you're the angel investor. And then obviously as the market leader, you're trying to disrupt the growth and the momentum of any projects that might come up to compete with your existing projects. And so that is kind of the way that it goes. It is a vicious cycle of downgrading and upgrading particular projects. And, even as the market leader, if you have a lot of money, maybe you get to the point where you sense kind of the rising tide and you, with your higher funding levels, just buy out the shares of the projects that are going to be successful, even if they're not your own. It's a very intriguing game that takes a take on the stock market and on the economy and on the startup industry that I haven't seen before. I'm not as familiar with economic games, and so it was intriguing to see how they decided to take the theme of the game and apply it to the mechanics. I think that the pipeline and the workflow present some interesting ways to adjust projects as you go, and then also the fact that all projects will make it there. It's just kind of a matter of what state existing and new projects are in by the end of the game, and whether you've attached yourself to the winning horse in terms of the bets that you've made. I also like that it's asymmetric. The BPO and the angel investor have an interesting different way of playing because they can add in cards to the worker placement, which means that the worker placement is not static. With just these 4, it can evolve over the course of the game and become a little bit more competitive for some of the regions, but it also frees up columns to be not necessarily used right away after a single round of play. And then it's just a matter of adjusting what event cards come up and responding to them and playing more efficiently to your type than the other players. This is Disrupt. This is from Triple Meeple Board Games. This has been a paid preview from Board Game Co. I appreciate all of you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.